Good day, everyone. I know this topic of climate change is kind of common issue. We always hear from the news, schools, and even to other people perhaps. But have we ever asked these questions? What is the moral issue behind this occurring climate change? And what can I do to mitigate its effect? At the end of this discussion, we hope you find yourself being in a state of awareness and knowledgeable enough to take a lead and be part of the solution in solving these issues we have today. But for a quick review, what is weather? What is climate? And what is climate change? So basically, weather refers to a short-term atmospheric conditions or basically the way the atmosphere is behaving. O sa mas madaling salita, ito ay ang pagbabago-bago ng panahon kung saan pwedeng maulan ngayong araw at mainit naman bukas. While climate is the description of the long-term pattern of weather in a particular area. Ito ay ang mahabang panahong tag-ulan o mas kilala bilang La Niña at El Niño naman sa mahabang tag-init. But I will ask you a question. Is La Niña and El Niño a product of climate change? The answer is no. The former and the latter have existed thousands of years ago. Pwede ba natin itong mapigilan? The answer is still no. Because El Niño and La Niña are naturally occurring climate patterns at wala tayong direktang kakayahang impluensyahan ang kanilang pagkakabuo, kalakasan o tagal nito sa ating atmosfera. So I hope it's clear now to you the differences between weather and climate. So, now we proceed in discussing climate change. So what is climate change? Climate change is a long-term change in the average weather patterns o ang matagalang pagbabago ng ating klima. Human activities commonly cause climate change. Energy sectors produce greenhouse gas emissions through transportations, electricity and heat, construction of buildings, construction and manufacturing, fugitive emissions, and other combustions of fuel. From the rising temperature worldwide, longer and extreme droughts, and to the destructive disasters, we made them all happen. So why do we not bother ourselves to ask these three questions? Number one, what is the moral issue? Number two, what can I do to solve this moral issue? And number three, why does it matter? So let me answer the first question first. What is the moral issue? First, the moral issue here is the anthropocentrism. So philosophically speaking, it is defined as that human beings are the most significant entities in the world and are superior to nature. Ito ay ang paniniwalang ang ibang mga nilalang kagaya ng mga hayop, halaman o iba pa ay instrumento lamang para sa benepisyo ng ating mga tao. For example, a tree. For most of us, we use it as a tool for building house, which is good and useful. But in the case of deforestation perhaps, is it good? Is it useful? The answer can be yes, but only for a short moment of time. Though we have benefited from the nature, but the consequences we get is about lifetime. Forests are the home of 80% of life on Earth. They are barriers against erosions and landslides. They give fresh air, clean drinking water in the rivers, and they attract the rain that is needed to grow food. Ngunit dahil sa ating paniniwalang tayong mga tao ang mas nakakalamang sa lahat ng mga nilalang dito sa mundo, their value become lesser and we now experience such as massive flooding and massive landslides. At alam nyo ba kung ang kadalasang nagdudusa nito? Most of the victims are the poor peasants, farm workers, and the urban poor. Because they live on riverbanks, at the foot of the mountains, mountain areas and slums, are in danger of being buried in mud and logs from the uplands. So hindi ba kayo nagtataka kung bakit kadalasan sa mga nakikita nating balita ay mga mahihirap ang mga namamatay, sugatan, nanghihingi ng tulong at paulit-ulit na lang itong nangyayari sa ating bansa. And I will quote late former DNR Secretary Gina Lopez, ang mga mahihirap ang magdudusa kung winawasak natin ang ating kalikasan. Hindi ba kayo nababagabag or even felt disturbed that deforestation and the emission of greenhouse gases have contributed to the existence of the climate change? So we can now proceed to our second question, which is, what can I do? Or what can you do? Sasagutin natin ang tanong na ito base sa siyensya at pilosopiya. Reforestation projects aims to restore places where severe environmental degradation is taking place. The goals of reforestation can span for economic benefits, cultural values, environmental conservations to climate change solutions. Number 2 is investing in energy-efficient technologies. According to the Department of Energy, by replacing fossil fuels with renewable sources of energy and by increasing energy efficiency, the carbon intensity of energy can be minimized. Solar energy, wind energy, tidal energy, hydropower, and many more are currently the most common renewable energy sources. Number 3, reducing water waste. We have several ways in which we can practice water conservations even at home. First, for agricultural purpose, such as watering landscape, lawns, and gardens, wastewater can be used. Second, water that is used from washing food or cooking on the non-potable water can be used for things that does not affect food safety. Third, storing and using water according to what is required and needed is the most important thing to remember in conserving water. And lastly, by simply turning off the running water in our faucets that are not in use. Number 4, supporting environmental movements. The World Wildlife Fund is a worldwide environment organization focusing on the protection of the Earth's natural resources. This includes our forests, oceans, among others. They are responsible for Earth Hour, an annual worldwide movement wherein lights are turned off homes and business from 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. This event is conducted to celebrate sustainability or even in the implementation within our LGUs, that is the ban plastic bags, proper waste management, and many more action. And number 5, the fighting for climate justice. The concept of climate justice evolved from the concept of environmental justice. The aim of the movement was to rethink environmental issue and social issues by ensuring the low economic sectors of the population and the ethnic minorities were not disproportionately affected by the adverse environmental impacts or hazards. So in order to mitigate the injustices on climate change, which is only the poor communities or poor countries suffer from its consequences, the Paris Agreement was initiated as the first international agreement to fight for climate justice. The movement aims to create a long-term temperature goal by setting a limit on countries' global peak of greenhouse gas emissions. And lastly, one way to solve this issue in the anthropocentrism is to intrinsically value our environment. O ang pagbibigay halaga sa ating kapaligiran hindi lang bilang isang instrumento, kundi mismo sa kanyang kabuuan. In other words, we value them as they are. Going back to the first example on how do we value a tree, let's put it in a simpler way. Diba, kung naglalakad tayo sa kalsada at napakainit ng panahon, maghahanap talaga tayo ng masisilungan o kadalasan dumadaan tayo sa ilalim ng mga puno. Now, we have benefited from that tree, which is its shade provides us. But for how long do we expect that the tree will continue existing? There is a higher chances that it will only live for a short moment of time. Why? Because we often view things such as the tree for the sake of our benefit. Then we are now on a third and final question. Why does it matter? Kung matibay ang ating paniniwala na ang halaga ng kapaligiran ay importante sa mundo, ay magkakaroon tayo ng sapat na kaalaman at pagmamahal sa ating kapaligiran. Therefore, it really matters to become part of the solution. Because man and the environment coexist for the common good of the world. Ang tao at ang kapaligiran ay nagbibigay balanse sa pagkakaiba-iba nating dito sa mundo. This is in relation with Aristotle's golden mean. Ang ibig sabihin nito ay dapat hindi tayo magkulang sa pagbibigay halaga sa ating kapaligiran at hindi naman dapat sobra-sobra dahil hindi natin makakamit ang balanse na siyang nagbibigay tunay na solusyon. This is what men should continue to pursue because it is only in this way we can mitigate the ongoing and future effect of natural and human-made disasters. Men should treat the environment as part of beings in order to value its existence in itself, and not mere instruments for human progress. Let me end this discussion by quoting Nicholas Agar in his book Life's Intrinsic Value. The intrinsic value associated with life forms is the foundation of the environmental ethics, enabling us to recognize nature's importance. Thank you for listening, and that's all.
You have heard the moral issue behind of climate change and our role in mitigating it. Now we have come to one of its results, and that is disaster. We have seen on news, may it be in our televisions or social media outlets, how destructive the typhoons become, especially here in the Philippines. For this reason, we are now looking towards our moral duty as youth in the communities in doing disaster response. For a quick review, a disaster is a serious disruption of the functioning of society, causing widespread human, material, or environmental losses that exceeds the local capacity to respond and calls for external assistance. A disaster is divided into two categories. First, the natural disasters, and second is the human-made disasters. Natural disasters pertain to those caused by hydrometeorological, geological, and biological hazards. Ang mga halimbawa nito ay ang mga pagbaha, buhawi, at ipo-ipo. While human-made disasters pertain to those category of disasters result from human actions or technological failures. Ito yung mga trahedyang dulot ng ating kapabayaan, kaya't nagre-resulta ito sa sunog, oil spills, at kabilang na rin dito ang gyera. So we are done with providing descriptions about the two types of disasters. We now proceed to the impact of natural and human-made disasters. Isa sa mga halimbawa ng natural na trahedya ay si Bagyong Ulysses. Noong nakalipas na taon sa araw ng ika-12 ng Nobyembre ay hinagupit ni Bagyong Ulysses ang ating bansa. Siguradong lahat sa atin ay alam kung ano ang nangyari doon. Nag-trend pa nga ang yung hashtag UlyssesPH at hashtag RescuePH para sa mas mabilisang paghahanap ng mga survivors. Typhoon Ulysses took 39 lives and about 1,800 individuals have been evacuated. Sa kabilang dako naman, ang Marawi Siege. Ito ay isa sa mga halimbawa ng human-made disasters. The killing was more than 1,000 civilians and almost 200,000 people have been displaced by the war. So what is really the point here? The point here is that disasters, displaced people o yung mga tao ay naaalis sa kanilang mga tinitirang mga lugar at kadalasan ay hindi na nakakabalik o nililipat sa ibang lugar. One of the key challenges facing internal displaced people are food security, sustainable housing, access to basic education, especially those displaced for extended periods. Kung susuriin natin ito ng mabuti, ay hindi ito ordinaryong mga pangyayari sa ating bansa at kung gaano katindi ang pangangailangan nila sa mga panahong ganito. This leads us to the question, what is our moral duty as youth members of the community? First, we have this what we call the humanitarian response. Humanitarian response is an aid that seeks to save lives and alleviate the suffering of a crisis-affected population. We have here the United Nations 4 key principles underlying humanitarian action. First is humanity. Human suffering must be addressed wherever it is found. The purpose of humanitarian action is to protect life and health and even ensure respect for human beings. Second is neutrality. Humanitarian actors must not take sides in hostilities or engage in controversies of a political, racial, religious, or ideological in nature. Number 3 is impartiality. Humanitarian action must be carried out on the basis of need alone, giving priority to the most urgent cases of distress and making no distinctions on the basis of nationality, race, gender, religious belief, class, or political opinions. And lastly is independence. Humanitarian action must be autonomous from the political, economic, military, or other objectives that any actor may hold with regard to areas where humanitarian action is being implemented. We bilang mga kabataan have the understanding of these challenges, strengths, and opportunities that affect our community. In the Philippines and worldwide, we have to move away from just humanitarian relief and move to a development work as well as preparedness. So we are now talking about disaster cycle, where response is just one component out of the 4. So we need to understand these 4 components one by one. So disasters are often thought as happening in a cyclical manner, consisting of 4 phases: preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Preparedness process involves the creation of established plans to save lives when a tragedy happens and to mitigate damage. Disaster prevention and preparedness steps, long before a disaster strikes, should be established and put in place. This also includes identifying hazards, holding a family meeting, determining the best evacuation routes from your home, and practicing your family plan on a regular basis. Second is response. It is the step that we have to take to save lives and prevent more in a tragedy and loss. After a tragedy has struck, this process starts immediately. This includes the provision of first aid and medical assistance, the execution of search and rescue operations, and the reconstruction of transport and communication networks, as well as the surveillance of public health and the evacuation of people who are still vulnerable to the effects of the disaster. Sa mga prosesong ito ay ipinamimigay ang mga importanteng supply sa mga nakaligtas sa trahedya. Kasama na rito ang pagkain at tubig. Third is recovery. Actions at this level include the restoration and maintenance of essential health facilities, including water and sanitation systems, the repair and replacement or rehabilitation of assets, and the process management of dead bodies. To help mitigate the psychosocial impact on families, proper care of dead bodies is important. Fourth is mitigation. The mitigation stage is the continuous action or policy formulation that risks to individuals and property from a catastrophe are minimized or removed. Current plans for preparedness are viewed and updated in order to enhance the efforts to plan, building or improving dams and levees, developing stronger and safer building standards, buying fire insurance, and changing land use zoning are a few examples of activities that may take during the mitigation process. Again, a disaster cycle is composed of 4 phases: preparation, response, recovery, and mitigation. Upon doing this response, we are becoming virtuous, and thus we are promoting the common good of everybody. Though it may seemingly overwhelm an individual, it is in this said action that we may be able to preserve the essence of bayanihan. Helping one's national government and to become an active youth in a community, therefore, is to be a virtuous youth in the current period is to actively engage in community-based youth organizations or initiatives that actively respond respond to both local and national emergencies. In the case of Hulog Paglaom, a student and youth-led organization is in the grounds of virtue ethics that the organization is rooted. This would then mean that this certain youth organization abides with the virtue of the mean, which was firstly introduced by Aristotle, and thus believes that goodness can be found in the mean between lack and excess, and to also consider that goodness is a habitual action. Since we are talking about common good, it is the goal of every individual in the community to establish a role that benefits the common good of each individual. It is in this theory that selfishness may deem to be prohibited or considered as an immoral act. Thus, in applying this theory in disaster preparedness, response, mitigation, and planning, it does not only benefit the youth, but also benefits the whole of the community. Therefore, as a citizen of the world, who relies basically on what the natural environment provides, the natural environment should be the most valued possession the humanity have. Hence, to take action against the threat of our environment and to participate in activities that would benefit the good of the ecosystem is justifiably right.
The moral duty of the youth in climate change mitigation and disaster response aims to provide the common good for every individual in the society. For the youth are the bearer of the sustainability in disaster risk management, and a lot of innovations will be sustained by those who have involved themselves in this kind of pursuit.
Aside from being enablers of disaster response, the youth does not only propel life recovery strategies to disaster victims, but the experience they will have from this will be integrated in their lives as they grow to be adults, and apply this in their family, career, and for the greater benefit of the community. Only in this immense effort which the environment and humanity can progressively coexist and thrive towards equal existence.